Good evening. Welcome to another Saturday session of Cat Space. I'm Kat. This is Buckets. Tonight we are hosting on our own. Unfortunately, my colleague Leon couldn't be here tonight, but he will be next Saturday. Tonight we have a very special edition of Cat Space.
It's like a duo edition instead of a threesome.
Absolutely. Fella.
Brilliant.
So tonight's topic is all about live music versus karaoke. So let's get into the first question, which is, with the current restrictions on karaoke as a super spreader, how is it that different from the popularity of live music?
See, it really actually isn't if you think about it, because if you think about karaoke, you're singing through the mic, right? That means you still got to put a microphone protector on it, or a sock, as they call it in the industry. And live music, you still got to do the same thing, right? So I really don't see the difference between, karaoke and, say, live music. In fact, it's interesting that live karaoke that used to have in pubs like the Unity and also Frankie's Pizza is banned, but live music itself isn't. What do you think?
I think that even though we still have karaoke and we still have live music, the difference is with karaoke is that now that restrictions are slowly but surely starting to lift once again, we're able to stand at pubs and clubs and taverns instead of sitting down. And I think it's the same for live music, where you're able to be amongst family and friends and one another. And even though with the tight restrictions, there's not much of a difference, I feel, for me. I mean, you're still able to get up, speak to your friends, sit with them, do whatever. And I think karaoke is just about the same, really. So to me, I don't really see a big difference.
No. You still have to do in karaoke. You still have to have like I believe it's a 4 meter away from the audience, and I think that's how karaoke in Australia is able to maintain its legality and still keep it running in some places. But if you can't meet that requirement, then they will ban you. So yeah, unless you can meet all the requirements, you're most likely not being your pub will most likely not be able to have karaoke.
But if you're smart enough to make sure that you sanitize your hands and you wear a mask as you come to the venue, but there are restrictions are starting to lift, and at the end of the day, music and karaoke are the same. Music is a universal language, and we all understand it, and it's about hope and unity and friendship and family. So once again, no difference, same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there really is no difference. In fact, the truth is you're probably more at risk if you're in a band, to be perfectly honest, because if you've got one karaoke singer singing a soloist song, then as opposed to having a band with 5 members in it, okay, unless those 5 members are socially distanced,
then you shouldn't have a problem.
You shouldn't have a problem, right? So, but in some cases, if you've got 5 people up there, most of the time they may not even be socially distanced because they can't be, because there's no space. Because if you think about it, the drummer, it might be at the back, so that would be at a certain spot. But then the guitarist might be somewhere else, and the singer who's singing all the songs
might be further up.
Might be further up. So, I mean, who knows where exactly all those musicians are actually placed. But they're all very likely to still spread COVID, especially if they join in on the song.
But the only way that you can avoid that, again, is if you sanitize your hands and use a microphone sock. And if you're socially distanced, whether you're a solo artist or whether you're in a band or whether you're at karaoke, the main thing is you're protected and you're protecting others around you. Now, the next question is, does live music such as DJs encourage people to dance whilst restrictions are in place?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, what's the point of a DJ if you're not going to dance? Like really? I mean, I haven't heard of any DJ that's literally going to play Bach, for example, or Mozart, which all of which is basically sit down music. I every time there's a DJ, what's the first thing you really want to do? Well, it's basically getting up to go drink or getting up to go party, and that's what you're basically going to be doing. So why are DJs legal, but somehow karaoke and live bands, somehow there's it's almost like there's a scale. So the karaoke have greater restrictions, but the amount of people that want to actually dance whilst there's a DJ could be greater than, say, 5 members of a band.
Exactly. And I think it's very important that, you know, DJs can't leave their post currently, and can't have people dance. But I think now it's sort of, as time goes on, dancing is allowed at weddings. So if dancing is allowed at weddings, then dancing should be allowed at karaoke, because there's no difference. You're all huddled into one place and you're all on the dance floor. I mean, it'd be ridiculous to have a sticker on stickers on the floor saying stand here, stand there, stand there, and stand there, because that's not exactly 1.5.
No.
And you're all going to be sweating and you're all going to be dancing and jumping up and down. So I would raise the option or the idea of bring dancing back. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, it's a way of freedom. It's a way of expressing yourself. It's a way of being, able to move around. It's a way of humanity. It's a way of us uniting as one and celebrating life, instead of being cornered and pushed to the back and, being told, oh, you can't dance. You just have to sit still. And it's hard to sit still in this day and age, even though, yes, it can be a super spreader, but dancing is like music. It's universal language, and we all need to celebrate life instead of being afraid of it.
I absolutely 100% agree.
Next question. Has the government forgotten how important karaoke and live music is to the psychological health and mental health to people who enjoy music but need a sense of relief or therapy?
I think they honestly have, and I don't think they fully realize the psychological impact of not being in a group. I don't think they fully realize that being in a group or being around friends is a really, really important part of being psychologically healthy. In fact, it's actually scientifically proven that the average human being needs to actually see, not necessarily talk to, but it needs to see at least 4 people per day in order to stay psychologically sane. And so when you restrict people from talking to each other, visiting people, even if like they're in we have this issue where we go to karaoke and we're stuck at one table, but all my other friends are on another table, and I'm not allowed to visit those people because of restrictions. And it's like there's this invisible wall, and I feel kind of crushed that I can't go speak to my friends. I feel like I'm in this border that
It's like an invisible barricade, really.
it is, and it's kind of really soul crushing that you go to karaoke not just for the music but to see your friends, and you can't talk to your friends. It's very restricting.
I mean, even though the government is saying, we need to live a post-COVID life, I think it's important to not put the fear in people, but as I said in the previous question, is to celebrate life. This is why we're all here on planet Earth, is to celebrate life. Yes, we're in the most dangerous times of our lives, but surely this too will pass, and we need to be aware of COVID, which everyone seems to be afraid of. And yes, it is frightening because it's killed millions. Vaccinations are now out. People are being vaccinated, or getting vaccinated. Masks are being worn, hands are being sanitized and washed, social distancing is happening. But I think the government needs to know that we as a country, we as a world need to celebrate life, and we need to celebrate it safely.
Yeah, that's
Here's
right.
the word, safely. We're safe.
Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned safely, because basically we've been to pubs that will we won't mention their names due to legal reasons, but we have been across pubs that they don't really give a damn about the how old the customers were, whether they were 17, 16, whatever, but all they care give a damn about is the QR code. And it's almost like, oh yeah, just as long as you're COVID free and you've given us your details,
You're
then
fine.
you're fine. Just go upstairs so they can make some money. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh wait, you've got all these underage teenage boys and girls. And then the pub gets shut down again.
Yeah, and we actually don't want that. So whoever's watching, we don't want that.
I believe that's your phone, Kat.
Yes, let me see what that is. Give me 1 second. Decline. Where is it? Sorry about that. So yeah, we don't want that to happen again where we're locked indoors. And you know, I think it's important to validate that life is important, that we are important, that you know the breath of life is important. I think music and life needs to carry on and eventually safely, as I've used that word again, safely.
But how do you feel about basically teenagers walking upstairs, okay, being as quite a safe environment, even though they meet the QR code standards, when they're entering a pub and they shouldn't be in that place? Do you think they should be in another place that's still just as safe that isn't a pub?
Absolutely. I think, you know, teens are, look, we were teens once and we didn't have this issue, but we did have the fact that they are just babies still and they're pretty young and they're very impressionable at that age and very vulnerable. But I agree with you. Yes, I think they need to be somewhere else that's their age and more safe. And we need to stay safe and keep our communities safe so we don't get in trouble. The word safe here, we're building a safety net here. We're talking about being safe in an environment where music and life need to continue.
Just before you go on to the next question, I do remember that the YMCA ages ago, and actually I think they
Can
still
you even say that?
The YMCA. Yep.
Okay.
I don't want to dance the thing. You know, can you do the YMCA?
Mhm.
The YMCA basically ran programs, and also the police youth citizenship club also ran the same programs where they would basically have dances for 16-year-old kids and up, but the cutoff limit would be 18. And those things are great, but I imagine that I'm not sure if they would still run them now because it's effectively a nightclub for children. Or teenagers or young
Wouldn't
adults.
say children.
Probably young adults or teenagers would be the better
term, I think, so you don't get in trouble.
But they still would run those things or could run those things on the condition that they are under the age of 18, okay, and can enter a building under with their QR code. But if they don't, basically, yes, I know you're pushing under my back, it's okay. But if they, as long as, I think sometimes a lot of security don't really care about how old a person is because they just need the money, because during this tough time where but there seems to be a lack of money because everyone's unemployed. It's like, oh, look, as long as they're safe and they don't have COVID, then let's just make some money. And I think that's where you've got the two problems. But I think they still need to not let down their guard and continue to obey the law.
Great. Next question. Why is live music preferred over karaoke? Live music is preferred over karaoke because, one, it's a safe environment. Two, it's socially distant. Three, people are sitting down and enjoying themselves listening to a great band or a local band. And five, it's the best way to sit and eat and be with your friends and drink and have a bit of a conversation. Even though you can't hear yourselves over the music, you still find a way to talk to each other. Karaoke is similar, but karaoke is sort of interrupted by, you know, people singing and whatnot, and the music gets louder and louder and louder to the point you can hear it yourselves. But I think loud music is more preferred by the age bracket. Shall I say, I don't want to get in trouble, but age bracket of, you know, what sort of people are into what. Some people are just into live music, and which is live music and open mic nights, and some people prefer karaoke where they get up and sing.
I admit that the karaoke doesn't. I mean, I love karaoke, and Kat and I love karaoke. But I also accept the fact that not everyone likes karaoke. And that's okay. If you're not into karaoke, it's not your deal.
That's fine.
That's fine. So I guess based off that point of view, yes, live music is probably much more well received, because who wouldn't want tickets to an AC/DC concert or a Backstreet Boys concert over, say, me singing, you know, a Robert Palmer song at 12 o'clock at night. So yes, for that reason, I can see it's more popular. But the one thing about karaoke is that karaoke isn't just you singing a song. It brings with it a kind of community.
Emotion.
Well, it's not just emotion. It's a community that comes with it. And I always found that singing for me was my form of therapy, where you'd be into like you'd be appreciated for your voice, and you could talk with your friends, and it was a support network, and it was a really, really important part of my life. And there's a lot of karaoke people that they do karaoke for exactly the same reason, that for them it's either a religion or a support network, and that's why they do it week after week after week after week. And it's nice to be validated, and it's nice to be appreciated. I mean, even if you're crap, you still, it's nice to be with your friends, and your friends give you the time to listen to you whilst you say what you need to do. And that's why karaoke is so addictive to people who like it. I don't know. For me, I like karaoke over live music. That's not to say I don't like live music, but I do like karaoke more than live music, purely because it means more to me than just the music alone. There's more of a meaning behind it. Again, not that I'm saying that there isn't meaning in music, but you have things like validation in karaoke, and like, again, another support network in karaoke that you may not get in just live music alone, because all you're doing is paying attention to the people that have great talent in their musical fields.
I agree with you, but remember, it's also good to mix it up a little bit. At times where you don't feel like going to karaoke, and you just want to sit down somewhere peaceful and have a meal or have a drink. Sometimes you like to go to a live music where, you know, family's there or friends are there, and you just want to listen to a few good songs and then have a cup of coffee, you know. Or sometimes you just want to go to karaoke and mix it up. It's always good to mix it up a little bit. Try something new. Next question. Whilst karaoke was banned, did the government destroy an entire community of musicians without realizing? Of course. I mean, musicians make their living through performing on stages and selling tickets and selling out arenas and selling out concerts and, you know, selling out places. And I think the government didn't realize that it pushed back the music scene, and it destroyed, again, the community and the vibe of dancing and singing and moving and being with family and friends. And I think musicians are finding it, or did find it hard, and still finding it hard to get back into the music scene, where they can't even tour. I mean, you had certain artists who are planning to tour this year and can't because of the COVID restrictions. And big bands, you know, big bands from overseas, like the Backstreet Boys, for example, who were supposed to be performing in Sydney this year, couldn't perform again, their DNA tour, because of COVID. So they have to come back next year.
How many times have they pushed it so many times?
This would be the second time this year, I think, you know. So it's I know, again, safety. We don't want to get in trouble with that. So safety. It's important to keep us safe and everybody in our communities and our friends and family safe. But I think the government realizes that without musicians, there'd be no money, there'd be no music, there'd be
Yes,
no
it's
joy,
true.
there'd be no hope, there'd be no
And
celebration.
I would just like to point out that there are, K-pop. I think that's a Korean band. Is
Mm,
that correct? Well, all these international stars from countries that most, if back 20 years ago would never even be listened to, are now being listened to because all the other stars that would normally come out of countries like England or Australia or America are being basically held back because of COVID.
mm,
And so you've got like stars that are coming out of China now and North Korea and other countries that would never even have a piece of limelight in a Western stage that now are purely because they don't have the same restrictions.
mm,
And so when you basically stop people from singing at karaoke, there might be like an amazing singer that could very well be, the next star that Australia has to offer, but it's effectively being denied because you're not allowing them to sing, and it's
mm,
and it's quite sad of that because like the pub that I used to go to that stopped their karaoke altogether had they had singers such as Paul Kelly. They also had a few other artists like Jimmy Barnes. They also had all these amazing Australian artists that made it big time. All started singing karaoke from that one pub, and now they've completely just cancelled karaoke because of COVID and other reasons. I don't know. I think one of the reasons was disturbing the peace, I guess. But that's effectively put this halt on the Australian bands, and you wonder why. Well, why is the only thing that's coming out of Australia Guy Sebastian?
he's a great singer. I'd love to interview him someday. Alrighty, next question. Is the emergence of both karaoke and live music the economic injection that the country actually needs to survive? Absolutely. I think post COVID, we need to pump a lot of money into music. I think it's important. I think it validates us, it validates humanity, it validates life, it validates excitement, it validates celebration, and it validates us coming together, not just as a country, but as citizens of the world. I think we need to celebrate life, as I've said. Music is a very integral part of who we are. We all listen to music, we all sing and dance, we all relate to each other through music, and it's very universal. And I think, yes, karaoke and live music should be the economic injection that the country actually needs to survive on, because that's where the money should be coming from, and I
Well,
think
if
invested in.
if you think about how rich pubs become because of karaoke, think about all those people that get nervous before singing a song. What's the first thing they do? They buy beer to calm their nerves down, and all that beer and alcohol that they buy is like an injection into the economy, and it's
But we're
very
not
well.
saying, alcohol should be consumed just because you're afraid. We're not trying to say
No,
that
but
here.
what we are saying is that if you go to a pub, what are the things that you're going to order? So you pubs need to ensure that that you're going to stay in a pub for long enough to buy their products. Otherwise, they can't run. So they're going to basically buy things like food. So you might buy a steak and chips or a surf and turf or some other dish. That might be about $25. Then you've got your drinks, for example. So you might buy a schooner, whether it's a schooner of Coke or a schooner of beer, and that could be anywhere between $2.50 to $5, depending on what you're ordering. Okay, and what the prices of things are. Or then if you want some snacks or something like that, so a bowl of chips or some country kettle chips, again, that would be more money. But if you want pubs to make any sort of money, there has to be a reason why people want to go there. And if you take away karaoke or live entertainment away from that, it's one less reason why you should stay at home. Because the reality is, if you wanted to, okay, it's probably cheaper to go down to the BWS, okay, and then watch a movie at home off Netflix. It's a lot cheaper. So, and I think pubs and clubs know this. So they have to basically find a reason why you would even want to go to that pub, whether that's to meet a date or something like that, or another reason. But um, there needs to be a reason for you to stay there long enough for them to make some money. And karaoke and live music is a really good reason for that.
Exactly. Next question. Do karaoke stars actually end up being live music stars? I believe that. I believe, like, for example, karaoke, some, not all karaoke places, but some karaoke places run comps. Even live music have live karaoke bands, and they get into comps, and those comps become celebrities in their own right. They become stars. They become famous. They go on to, say, for example, The Voice, and they get picked and they get signed and they become worldwide sensations. So I think, yes, I think karaoke stars actually end up being live music stars, recording stars, celebrities.
Well, it's funny because it's interesting that you say that, because I knew a friend of mine that she would go to karaoke, for the first few years. And then she went to another sort of form of karaoke, but not quite karaoke, where people bring their instruments along and they would kind of groove together and play together and start to form bands this way. And from there, if they're talented enough and they write their own songs and people like their voices, then they make it to the big time if they keep developing their skills and their craft. Um,
Some even
so
start
I
their own
so I
bands.
so I have actually seen that happen before.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think karaoke stars, as I said, do go on to The Voice. Sometimes, not all of them, but they, they start off that way and they practice and they practice and they practice, and then it takes them years to build their craft, and they work on their vocal cords and their voice and their presentations, and then they end up being celebrities. So that answers that. Next questions. Will we ever see the return of live concerts? I'm hoping and I'm praying and I'm confident that come next year we will see the return of live concerts in its full capacity. I mean, we've already got sporting events that are packing the places. And I think live music will return next year. And I think it'll return more better than ever, more advanced than ever, and bigger and brighter and happier and healthier and safer. I think yes.
I think here's the really tough question. So there's a couple of options with the live music, or live concerts, I should say, to be specific. So they possibly could do it, but if they were to do it, this is what would happen. The tickets would become more expensive because if they were to socially distance themselves legally, it would mean that they couldn't fill the stadium to capacity, which means the tickets would be basically doubly as expensive to make up for the other seats. I mean, yeah, I reckon there's going to be a point in time where they're going to have to bring it back because it is a major money spender, and there is a lot of money that concerts bring with them, because again, people who will always want to buy food, and people will always want to buy drink, and
it's not just that.
and it's also the tax money that goes with that as well. But yep.
I think in all its glory, sorry to cut you off, all its glory, people like to spend money on merchandise. Don't forget, concerts bring a lot of merchandise. Memorabilia is very, very expensive at concerts. I mean, there are a lot of, when you go to a concert, it's not just the food and drinks and the friends you're with, it's the memorabilia. It's how much money you can spend at the venue and buy t-shirts and caps and keyrings and the catalogs and the DVDs, the CDs, just anything. It's all money invested into live
T-shirts
concerts.
as
Yeah,
well.
that's what. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what I said. It's merchandise, and how many people have buy all that stuff, and that's how they make business. Don't you think?
That's right. And you know what? If you think about, what goes into making a T-shirt, well, first, the band is going to take a cut, but to make a T-shirt, that's going to create jobs because there needs to be factory workers to create the T-shirts.
And don't forget the hoodies as well.
Well, yeah, for the same purpose. There's if someone makes a hoodie, you need factory workers to make the hoodies, and that's a economic injection into a community that basically makes clothing lines, makes clothing on the clothing line, not the clothesline.
But that's how people relate. I mean, they're not just buying the clothing and the keyrings and the caps and the catalogs, and there's also, don't forget, there's meet and greets as well, and there's badges. Meet and greets are very popular when it comes to concerts because people like to stay behind, and meet and greets are usually about 500 up, and you only get like 10 seconds with the solo artist or with the band that you're going to see, and you get one photo for 10 seconds. I mean, is that really worth it?
Depends how much of a hardcore fan you are. But look, if you think about it, look at how much security goes into one concert. I mean, you got like 1,000 security guards in one concert. I mean, that's a massive amount of money. Not to mention all the hospitality workers that work at the bars that serve either a meat pie or a bartender or whatever. That's a lot of work kind of thing. So concerts, they only help the economy. They don't deplete it.
Absolutely, I agree. Last question. Is the karaoke scene a cutthroat industry? Oh,
Absolutely.
yes.
It absolutely is.
Yes, 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 on all fronts.
And like I've heard of some really dirty tricks that karaoke companies have done. Again, I won't mention any names because it'll just anger me.
And we could get in trouble.
And we could get in trouble. But I've heard of karaoke companies doing things like creating false accounts and then, blaming karaoke other karaoke hosts for sexual assault, for example. I've heard of doing things, people like making false accounts and writing false comments in the bars that they've been from.
Or just simply coming to the venue.
Or I've heard of other stories, real nasty stories of showing up to the venue and basically asking questions about how much the karaoke host gets paid,
what venues they do,
how many days a week, how many days a week, like snooping around to try and take their gigs. And it only takes like one thing, and that karaoke host has lost his job, and which is a real shame because the thing is, a lot of fans of karaoke, they follow their karaoke host like family. And so when someone else takes over, it takes a bit of trust to get used to them. And they may not get used to them straight away. So if they don't like them, what you'll find is they'll just leave and find another place to go.
Exactly. I think that I think I agree with you is that there's a lot in this, and it's very cutthroat industry because there are places that people go to and they prefer one karaoke company or a host to another, and sort of the rivalry begins and the cost cutting and the grass cutting and whatnot. So I think that's
Yeah, I've even heard of friends of mine, like again, I won't name any names, that have set up karaoke companies and have literally been afraid to advertise on their own behalf because they're afraid that other competitive karaoke hosts will somehow disrupt their their businesses,
and their flow.
And that's happened before, and it really is like I've it is very much like a mafia in a way where they basically disrupt and destroy it for everyone, and that's really sad for me, because I go to karaoke because I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to get involved in the turf wars that happen between the other karaoke hosts. And I think that's sad that they go to that level just to make some money, to be perfectly honest.
But don't forget, we are as human beings, we're very competitive in nature. And I think the competitiveness comes out, and then we see that on a weekly basis, is that people are competitive and hungry to have a growth in their business, and they're hungry and they're passionate to have their time in the limelight. And I think that's a very difficult thing. But to answer that, yes, it's a cutthroat.
It is a cutthroat business, and it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately it is.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on Catchphrase with myself and Buckets.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, and we hope you guys have a great evening.
By the way, don't forget to like, share, subscribe,
and share, and tell all your friends to subscribe, yes, and like, and leave some comments for us. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Hopefully.
And one other thing, if you basically have a bright idea that you'd like to tell us, that you want to leave in the comments, and it's good enough, and we feel that we'll talk about it, there'd be a nice shiny award for
even
you.
A shout out,
and a shout out as well.
But that award is in the making, in the process. Well, but we can't promise that yet, but
yes, we can.
But we'll give you a shout out. And that, we'll see you next Wednesday, and good night, folks.
Right, bye.